Welcome to the session on the technology stack for developing IT-based applications. We're going to look at what are the technologies that are available today in the market and where do these technologies actually go and fit in or slot in when you're trying to build an enterprise application. What I have here is a sample diagram depicting what a typical enterprise application would look like. So I'm going to have a client here which is an Internet Explorer based client, which is something where the users or your end users would come and interact with. Post entry of data, we would expect the data to flow to the web server. That's where the application would be deployed. The data would then get authenticated on an application server. That's where we would expect the business logic to lie. And ultimately, the persistence tier would be some kind of a database server. This is something that we would refer to as an enterprise architecture. We are now looking at what are the set of technologies that we would need to implement to enable developers to create an application like this. I'm going to look at the first tier, which is the presentation tier, and what are the set of technologies that are available that we could use to actually go and create something like this. The first thing that I would need to start creating an application for an IE based client is a technology called as HTML. Now HTML is a programming language which is interpreted, so you don't really go and compile something in HTML. It's not strongly typed, it doesn't support conditional branches or something like that. So it's purely a set of markup statements that you have which allow you to create very well defined user interfaces. The current version of HTML that the industry is using is version 4.0. We have an even newer release which is 5.0, which is just out in the market and which would be a better bet to use, but there's not a lot of industry experience on creating HTML5 applications as of now. Another technology that we typically could have used here to create the presentation tier based application is something we call as DHTML. What is DHTML? Well, HTML is more about creating static pages where you have a set of buttons, you have a set of images on your browser. You would have probably taken a look at a lot of web applications like Facebook and Hotmail and Gmail to access your email content and your friend list. Now, how is DHTML different from HTML? DHTML is more about adding dynamic content to the page. So you click on a button, you have something flowing from left to right, you have a couple of animations that you could add. So it's more about looking at how the user interacts with your page and changing the look and feel of the page accordingly. DHTML is a technology that collaborates a set of three technologies together, one being HTML, the other one being CSS, and the next being scripting. So what is CSS? Well, it's a set of styles. So you put in a set of styles into a page, save it as a CSS, and you apply the styles across all pages of your website. It's more like having a theme. So if you decide I want all pages on the website to have a green color, you simply at runtime change the theme of the file, and what the developer would do internally is simply apply a CSS dynamically on top of the page, which would make the entire page change its color. Scripting, on the other hand, is small little code snippets that you would write attached to your HTML controls, which means when I click on the button, what is that you would like to do? Probably take the username and password, authenticate it, or probably pop up a simple message to the user saying good morning and welcome to our website. It's an amalgamation of HTML, CSS and scripting which actually give you dynamic capability to your page, and which is what we today refer to as DHTML. If you want also to store data, you could also use something called as XML, which is another technology that allows you to persist data temporarily and transfer it from one end to the other. XML being open source, it would work with any backend technology that you're using, probably Java or Microsoft .NET. It's completely open-ended. There are a couple of additional technologies that we could have used here to create the UI tier. One of it being what we call today as Silverlight. Silverlight is a popular technology by Microsoft, and it's basically used to replace what we today do with Flash or Adobe Flash. It allows you to create very sharp and high resolution content which is also very lightweight for your client browsers. You also create Silverlight content in Microsoft.NET technologies and deploy it onto the client browser so that clients can have a better and richer user experience when interacting with your website. That basically summarizes the set of technologies at a very higher level that you could create for developing the UI content for the presentation tier. Let's move to the web server. That's where the actual web application would get deployed. There are a couple of technologies that we could have used here. One of them being ASP.NET, and you typically would write code for ASP.NET using a Microsoft language called as C#. So that's the technology that I would need to learn and understand to start creating applications for the web. Coupled with this, we would also need a technology called as JSP and servlets. Okay, so in case you are a Microsoft enthusiast, you would prefer using the ASP.NET technology stack. If you would prefer to use the Oracle Sun set of technologies, popularly known as the Java stack today, you would preferably use JSP and servlets to start designing content that you would put up on the web server for developing a simple web application. Moving on to the application server, as discussed, the business logic is something that you're going to put up here so that n number of clients can go and access it. The business logic would be probably interest calculation for your account. It could also be authenticating the user and checking whether he has a valid user ID and password before you take him online and into your website. In terms of the stack here, I could have used EJB or I could have used COM+. These are the two technologies that could have been implemented for creating content for the application server. If you are inclined to Microsoft technologies, COM+ is the way to go, which is Microsoft's application server, where you deploy a business logic component into the application server and it would scale up to n number of users trying to connect to it. EJB, on the other hand, is the Java equivalent of what is available in the market today to create content for the application server, where you deploy your component, typically a Java bean, into the EJB container, and it would automatically manage object creation, scalability, scale up to huge number of users trying to access your website. What remains is the database server. So let's look at what is that we would need to put up on the database server end. Again, if you are a Java enthusiast, you could use the Oracle database server or the Microsoft database server, either of which is capable of connecting to either stacks. So if you're using a J2E or a Java implementation, you could use SQL Server or Oracle, Oracle being the preferred choice for seamless integration with the Java stack, and SQL Server being the preferred choice for seamless integration with the Microsoft stack. Also, when you look at a technology like this, today you have users also looking at connecting with the application not only from their laptops, but also when they are in transit from one place to another, they would expect connectivity to a scenario like this also from their mobile devices. So if I were to seamlessly integrate a mobile device with this current application stack, it would be very simple for me to do that. I'm going to depict here a mobile device. All I would need is something called as a gateway to integrate this with the current architecture that we've put together. So what we've got there is now a user trying to communicate with the application, logging into the banking website using mobile banking. All I need is a simple gateway there, which is typically a protocol converter. A mobile application would typically use GPRS or WAP to try and communicate with my application, I would set up a gateway there which would convert the WAP or the GPRS request to an equivalent request that would be understood by my web server and bring in that content out here. In terms of the technology stack that I'll require to start creating an application there, the Java micro edition, if you are inclined towards the Java technology. If you were more inclined to the Microsoft stack, again ASP.NET is something that I would need to start creating applications for the mobile application. If I need, most of these applications are typically not standalone applications. I would expect to execute them in a browser. If you would need standard applications to be installed onto the mobile, then obviously I would need support for the Android SDK. I would need support for the Windows 7 SDK, which are typically OSs and SDKs that are targeted towards mobile devices. That's it in terms of the technology stack to enable developers to create an enterprise application like this. Thank you so much.